demanded entry. The Apache said they uncovered the truth. Open your legs, the Apache said. He demanded entry.
The fire in the ceremonial lodge burned low, breathing amber light onto the woven walls as night settled over the Apache Valley like a held breath. Outside, drums had long fallen silent. Inside, only the quiet crackle of embers remained, witness to a union sealed before ancestors and stars. Nayeli Whitefeather sat on the edge of the cedarwood bed, her bridal dress heavy with beadwork and prayers sewn by women who believed her story was simple. Her hands trembled beneath the moonstone shawl. Across from her stood Sunk Red Clay, tall and still, his presence calm as the mountains that raised him. A respected Apache warrior, he carried gentleness in his eyes that had seen battle, loss, and long solitude. This was their wedding night. Yet between them lay a truth heavier than vows. Sunk stepped closer, his voice low, careful, filled with concern rather than command. "Open your legs. I need to get inside," he said, not with hunger, but urgency, pointing toward the tight ceremonial bindings meant to be loosened only by a husband. "You're trembling. Let me help. Let me step into this moment with you." Nayeli's breath caught. Her heart pounded like a drum calling spirits awake. She had prayed for courage, but prayers do not silence fear. They only give it meaning. As Sunk reached for the clasp of her dress, her fingers tightened around his wrist. "Wait," she whispered. In that single word lived years of silence. As he gently opened the outer layer of her dress, careful, reverent, his eyes fell upon the markings hidden beneath the silk and beads. Not scars of shame, but signs of a past written in pain and survival. His breath stilled. The fire flickered. This was not the night he expected, nor was Nayeli the woman the village thought they knew. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying secrets only love could hear. Inside, two souls stood at the edge of a revelation that would either shatter them or bind them forever. Sunk lifted his gaze to her face, not with shock, but with a tenderness that startled her more than judgment ever could. And in that moment, everything began to change. Long before the wedding fire dimmed to embers, long before Nayeli Whitefeather wore white beads and moonstones, her life had already been shaped by silence. She was born beneath the red cliffs of Canyon de Chelly, daughter of Elena Whitefeather, a healer known for listening more than speaking. Nayeli learned early that pain could be carried quietly, that dignity often survived where words failed. When tragedy struck her family during her youth, a cruel twist of fate that left marks upon her body and deeper ones upon her spirit, she learned another lesson. Survival is not loud. It is patient. Years later, when Sunk Red Clay returned to the valley after seasons of warfare and wandering, he did not seek a bride. He sought peace. His father had fallen in battle, his mother to illness, and the weight of leadership pressed on his shoulders like winter snow. He spent his days repairing fences, helping elders, keeping to himself. It was fate, or perhaps gentler design, that brought him to Elena's lodge one evening, injured and exhausted. Nayeli tended his wounds with steady hands and downcast eyes. She spoke little, yet in the quiet between them, something softened. Their love did not arrive suddenly. It grew like dawn, slow, inevitable, kind. Sunk admired her strength, her grace, the way she listened as if every soul mattered. Nayeli saw in him a man who never demanded, only offered. When he asked for her hand, it was with humility, not claim. But Nayeli carried her secret alone. She feared that the truth of her past, the harm done to her, the changes it had left, would make her unworthy in his eyes. The elders said a wife should be whole. Nayeli wondered if love could be. On their wedding day, joy surrounded her, but fear walked beside her every step. She smiled because she loved him. She trembled because she trusted him too much to lose him. Now, on their wedding night, as Sunk knelt before her, his hands warm and steady, Nayeli's past stood between them, uninvited, undeniable. "I should have told you," she whispered, tears finally breaking free. "Before vows, before songs, before you chose me." Sunk did not step back. Instead, he listened, and in his silence, Nayeli sensed something extraordinary approaching, not rejection, but truth. The fire whispered as to sunk red, Clay slowly rose to his feet, not to leave, but to stand closer, close enough that Nayeli Whitefeather could feel the warmth of his presence steady her trembling heart. He did not rush her words. He did not interrupt her tears. He waited, the way strong men do when love matters more than pride. Nayeli gathered her breath as one gathers broken pieces of a sacred bowl. "When I was younger," she began, her voice barely more than air, "I was promised to someone who did not see me as a soul, only as ownership." Her hands shook as she rested them against her dress. "What he did left marks the world cannot see easily, but they are there. I feared that when you discovered the truth, you would see me as less." Her confession fell into the lodge like rain on dry earth, soft, aching, honest. Sunk knelt before her again, this time lowering himself until his eyes were level with hers. "When I asked to step inside this moment with you," he said gently, "I did not mean your body alone. I meant your life, your past, your pain." He reached for her hands, not to claim them, but to shelter them between his palms. "My father taught me that a warrior is not measured by what he takes," Sunk continued, his voice thick with emotion, "but by what he protects." His eyes shone, not with pity, but reverence. "What happened to you was not your shame. It was your survival." Nayeli searched his face, waiting for the fracture she had always feared. It never came. Instead, Sunk carefully wrapped her shawl around her shoulders again, as if restoring something sacred. "Tonight," he said, "we move only as far as your heart allows. Marriage is not proven in one night. It is proven in patience." Her tears fell freely now, not from fear, but relief. For the first time, Nayeli understood that love could be a place of safety, not expectation. That destiny did not punish the wounded. It paired them with those gentle enough to heal. Outside, the moon climbed higher, bathing the valley in silver. Inside, two souls sat together in quiet understanding, their bond forged not through perfection, but through truth. And though the night was still young, something far deeper than desire had already united them. Morning did not arrive with birdsong alone. It came with a fragile peace that settled gently over the lodge. The fire had faded to ash, yet warmth lingered, the kind born not of flame, but of understanding. Nayeli Whitefeather awoke slowly, unsure of where the night had carried her heart. She found Sunk red Clay sitting nearby, shaping a small piece of cedar with his knife, a traditional token of promise among his people. He looked up at her, as if she were sunrise itself. "I could not sleep," he said softly. "I kept thinking about how brave you were." Nayeli lowered her gaze. "Brave?" she repeated, uncertain. "I felt broken." Sunk set the carving down and crossed the space between them. "Broken things are not useless," he replied. "They are sacred. They teach us where care is needed most." Later that day, when the elders gathered to bless the couple anew, Nayeli expected questions, whispers, judgment. But Sunk stood beside her with quiet strength, his hand resting lightly over hers. When an elder spoke of union, of shared burdens and shared healing, Sunk met Nayeli's eyes as if the words were written only for them. Days turned into seasons. Love did not rush. It unfolded. Sunk never pressed where Nayeli was not ready. Instead, he built trust in 1,000 small ways. Waiting, listening, honoring her boundaries as sacred ground. Nayeli, in return, learned to believe in gentleness again. She laughed more. She spoke more. The scars of her past did not vanish, but they softened beneath patience. One evening, beneath a sky heavy with stars, Nayeli placed her hand over Sunk's heart. "I no longer fear you seeing all of me," she whispered, "because you never tried to take anything." Sunk smiled, eyes filled with quiet devotion. "Love," he said, "is not entering someone without permission. It is being invited, and still walking slowly." In that moment, Nayeli understood something profound. Her worth had never been defined by what she endured. It was defined by the love she was still capable of giving and receiving. Their marriage became a story spoken softly among the people, not of perfection, but of patience. Not of possession, but protection. And destiny, at last, felt kind. Years later, when the valley spoke of love, it did not speak loudly. It spoke in gestures. It spoke of Nayeli Whitefeather, who walked with her head high, no longer guarded by fear, but guided by trust. It spoke of sunk red clay, whose strength was measured not by battles won, but by the gentleness with which he held another's heart. Together, they became a quiet testament to what marriage was always meant to be, a sanctuary. One winter evening, as snow softened the world into silence, Nayeli sat beside the hearth, mending a child's blanket. Sunk entered, brushing frost from his shoulders, and paused to watch her. In that pause lived years of shared healing. I used to believe love was something you had to earn by being untouched, Nayeli said softly, as if continuing a thought begun long ago. Now I know it is something you receive by being truthful. Sunk knelt beside her, resting his forehead against hers. And I once believed leadership meant standing alone, he replied. You taught me that real strength is choosing to stay. Their love had not erased the past. It had redeemed it. On the anniversary of their wedding, they returned to the lodge where truth had first stepped into the light. Sunk placed the same cedar token into Nayeli's hands, now smoothed by time. I choose you, he said, again. Not because you are unbroken, but because you are real. Nayeli smiled through tears that no longer carried fear. And I choose you, she answered, because you saw my truth and called it sacred. The fire crackled, the ancestors listened, and the night held them gently, no longer as two wounded souls, but as one story rewritten by love. True love, they learned, is not about entering someone's life without care. It is about asking, waiting, honoring, healing. It is about choosing compassion when judgment would be easier, patience when desire would rush, and faith when fear remembers too much. And so their story lived on, not as a legend of perfection, but as a promise that love does not demand innocence. It asks for honesty. If this story touched your heart, remember, your truth is not a burden to love. It is the doorway to it.